Welcome back to my YouTube channel, and today is finally the last day of our e-commerce series. And in this specific video, what I'll do is that I'll tell you how we can write the unit test and the UI or like an instrumentation test. So when I say last video, this doesn't mean that this project is completed, because this has a lot of edge cases that we haven't implemented. There are a lot of things that we haven't done. So how do we do that? For that, I'll need your help. And by when I say your help, what I mean is that I would like you guys to contribute to this and handle all the edge cases. So how we are going to do that? Basically what I'll do is that I'll create some tickets or some issues on the GitHub repository that you already have. And what I would request you guys is to take up whatever ticket that is available and implement it, right? So I'll explain more in the later stage of this video, but for now, without wasting any time, let's just jump to the code and write some exciting tests. When I say testing, and if you look into this code, we have like so many classes and so many sections, right? And if I start like writing these tests for each class or like each view model, it will take a lot of time. So what I'll do is that I'll pick up one of the most used view model of this specific code, and I'll write a couple of tests for that, like unit tests for that view model, right? That will basically give you an example of how we can mock things, how we can inject the dependencies if the class requires some sort of dependency injection. So how we can create mocks of those and then incorporate as a dependency injections, and how we can test specific methods. So when we talk about unit test, and if you haven't seen my video about unit test, I've explained that thoroughly and what exactly the unit test is. But when we talk about unit test, let's say if I talk about this specific section, when I say that what is a unit test means that a very specific, like a smaller chunk of the code that you could test. In our case, let's take these two functions as an example. These are the two functionalities that we expose, right? And it is being used from the outside world. And what it does is that it takes whatever the item model, and then it updates the value of that, right? This is basically what it does. And in term of test, what I expect from this, that whenever I pass a cart item to this, it should increment the quantity of that, right? So if I want to test that specific functionality, I would need to write a test for that. Same goes for the decrement. We can create a function that should do only decrement, and the same thing goes for this over here, is that if I pass like a cart item model, in return it should remove the item from that. So what I mean is that we will test a very specific chunk. Now let's say this specific internal function uses something else. Let's say update quantity, and when we get over here, you can see that it uses this update quantity use case that comes from outside of this class. Since we will be testing only this class and this specific section, this is some sort of a dependency that comes from outside, right? So for these kind of things, what we have to do is that we need to mock these. Okay, so what does this mean is, like in a successful scenario, when we execute this, it should return the updated, like whatever list item, like or the model that we have. In our case, it basically return a list of cards, right? So what we will do is that this should be mocked, because if we try to execute this, it will take like go to a separate class, and that is not in our scope when we are doing the unit test, right? So that's why we will be, whatever external classes or objects that we use in our code, when we are unit testing, we will always mock those classes or mock those functionalities, so that we know that how, like, we can focus on only the unit that we are testing it. But let's say you want to like test if this whole flow is actually working, and for that what we will do is that we will write some instrumentation tests, so that that is basically a complete flow of application. You can test a specific flow. In our case, let's say if you want to test a login flow, when we like give a proper user input, we should get a proper result for that, right? So these kind of things can be done when we are doing instrumentation tests. For unit, it will be just one unit at a time. Okay, that's one thing. Second thing is that before like writing any test, and that is because one of the reason I did that. And now over here, when I see Like when I talk about this shopper session, this is basically being used at like a very different places, like you can see all these places. And this is basically what this is a normal singleton object, right? But normally a singleton classes like these cannot be tested properly. Like you have to do some workaround along with that, maybe some use external libraries to mock these functionality, because when I talk about this specific function, we use this like shared preferences and things like that, that comes from context. So we have to like do a lot of things to basically mock these, right? So the first thing that I'll do over here is that I'll make it a normal class, but I'll be injecting it through Koin as a dependency injection through all the, like in the all other classes where I have used it. And that way it will be easier for me to mock this class and use it, right? So how am I going to do that? So to do that, the first thing that I need to do is that I'll make it a class. Okay, and then I'm just gonna take out this Koin component from this, and allow, other than like to replace that, what I will do is that I'll say private, sorry, private wall context as in context. So this is basically how am I going to do this. Now when I do this, you will see that it will like start complaining, like every place wherever I have used, like over here it will start complaining that this is not, we are not able to use or access that, right? So before doing anything like that, what I'll do is that, as I mentioned, that I'll be handling it through my dependency injections. And over here what I'll define is that we need to create a singleton. Make sure to use single over here, which means that whenever you will be accessing it through the dependency injection, it will be allowing you to give you a single instant, and it won't create multiple, right? And since the context can be directly accessed through get in Koin, because we set it in the application over here, when we like set it up over here like this, so we can directly access this. So this is how what we will do is that we will be using session, right? And now at all the classes we will be using it through our injection, right? So over here, let's say when I'm at the main activity, what I'll do is that I'll say shopper session, which is going to be a shopper session, and by that what I'll do is that I'll use by inject. So when I use this, it will be easily accessible, and now I'll just replace it with this. This way what I did is that I called Koin to create, like give me the shopper session, which creates a singleton and then returns it, and I set it over here. And by this means that now whenever next time I use it, will be returning the same object because it's a singleton, right? So that's one thing. Now let's just go to each view model where we have been using it, because now it will start complaining at every single place, because definitely we need to do that. And over here what we will do is that for login view model, I'll create private, or let's call it shopper session as this. Okay, now we'll be using this, and sorry, it should be private wall like this. Okay, so when I do this and I replace it with that, it will be directly. And when I talk about here like this, we need to update the dependency for that as well, right? So when I click on this and then click get over here, you will see that it will start complaining over here. So over here I'll define this get, which means that it will, the Koin will try to find the relevant class and inject it directly, which in our case is already available in this presentation module. So it will be working as expected. Now the login thing is done. Now let's just go to register view model, and over here it will be the same case. So what I'll do is that I'll just copy this and I'll paste it over here, and over here it will be just the shopper session like this. Now we'll be doing the same thing for this as well in the injection. So I'll define this injection over here as well. Now let's just go to cart, and over here you will also see that this is another problem in our case. So we'll be doing this and shopper session dot get user, right? In home view model, I don't think we use it anywhere. And then we'll go to order view model, and over here we are using it. So I'll just update this as well, and this is going to be shopper session. Next thing is product details. We're definitely going to use this, and for that what I'll do is that I'll use this like, and then we will be using shopper section like this. Okay, and for summary we'll be using this as well. Let's just use that now. Okay, and for user address I don't think so we do use it, and I guess that should be it, right? And now let's just go up to the view models, and where like whichever class is complaining, let's just add the get to that so that it can access that. Okay, now all these things are done. Now let's just run the code and see if like everything is working without any error, without any issue, and then we'll jump towards writing the tests. So by doing this, what we did over here is that rather than creating a singleton as an object, we created a testable class, and that can be mockable as well. And what we did is that we created a singleton of that object through Koin. So Koin will handle all the single entity for that, and we will be using it through Koin wherever we want, and that is like as simple as that. Okay, so the build worked properly without any issue. The app is being installed completely fine, as you can see. And the next thing is that let's just try if everything that I mentioned like is working as intended, right? It's like working properly. And if I like just close this and open this app again, it will again take me to the home screen that was expected, right? So like everything is working and there is no issue. So the changes that we did are like working as an intended. Now let's just go get to the cool part of this whole series and start working on our unit test. Okay, so when we talk about unit test, what you can do, there are like multiple ways to do it, to create like classes for unit test. So the first thing that I'll do is that I'll need some dependencies that are specific to my test, and then after that what I'll do is that I'll go further with the other implementation and add the other changes to this. Okay, so to the first thing is that I need some unit tests, right? So to add some unit test, what I'll do is that I'll take some sort of dependencies and I'll add it over here. So these are some dependencies that we will be adding, some for coroutine. Then we will be using Mockito. Mockito is basically will help us to mock the classes, the external classes that I mentioned, and then we will be using test Koin test and Koin test JUnit, and then we will be using Kotlin inline to handle the final classes. Like normally the final classes cannot be mocked directly, so we will be using a Kotlin inline for that, right? So these are the things that we need to define, but since I haven't added them to the my libs version over here, so let's just add them to there, add them there as well. So I'm gonna say unit test, and then we will be using this, and now we will be using the versions as well. So let's just add versions as well. And now once you do that, we will be syncing everything. Okay, so once the sync is done, now let's just close these two things, and now let's just say we want to write some unit test for this method, right? So what I'll do is that I'll go over here, right click, and then generate it. You can like click anywhere in your class. That is one way to do it. What it does is that it creates relevant like packages, and you don't have to do everything manually, but you can like create the classes manually as well. No, there is no issue. So you will go over here and click on generate, and once you click on generate, it will, this section, it will show you test, right? So just click on that and it will create test. Now inside test, do make sure to like check these things out. You need to have these two functionality if you want. I'll explain, and I'll explain it what exactly and then these are the public functions that you can test. In our case, I want to test these two functionalities, so I'll just add these two tests into this, and let's just go for, let's just do okay, right? And now you can see that you have these two sections. One is this Android test, one is unit test. The unit test mean is that if we're like writing some sort of unit test, we will be adding it over here. And if we are going to write some instrumentation test, then we will be going there, right? So right now we are going for unit test, so I'll select this specific section, and you can see that it will now create this whole package automatically without me doing it manually, which is good, right? And once you get these things, let's just get rid of all this. We will be using JUnit testing for that, so just get rid of everything over here. Now we have this thing. So for this, what I'll do is that I'll call it before, right? For this I'll be using after, right? And since I'll be using Koin for all this, so just make sure to extend it with Koin test as well. So when you do that, you will be able to use Koin in this specific section. Now that is one thing, and over here we will be defining our test cases. So that's a later, that we will do it the later part. What I can do is that I can add some test to this as well, so that we can use it later on. Now this is the very basic structure of our application, and what exactly this means is that before means that whenever a test is run, this specific functionality will be called for that test, and for after it will be once the test has completed. If you want to clean up anything like that, you can do it over here. And this test means like whenever you run this test will be used, and it will do all whatever you want to test in your app, right? So the first thing that since I want to test my cart view model, and if I open that cart view model, you will see that it takes around 4 parameters as a constructor parameters, right? These are these 4 parameters: cart use case, update quantity use case, delete item, and shopper session. And to mention over here, all these classes are supposed to be mocked, because I'm not going to go deeper like inside of implementation of these and test this, because this is not the like properties of unit test. For unit test, first what I want is that I want to see if this specific functionality that I do by like adding or subtracting the item is actually working, right? So that's basically what I'm going to test. So when I say I need to mock them, this over here, what now I will basically try to mock each and everything. So the first thing is basically my what was that? The first thing is cart use case. So I'll say cart use case, right? And that is going to be get cart use case, and I'll be using it as mock. Get cart use case, and then what we will do is that we will mock it, and make sure to use this Mockito Kotlin for this. And when you do it, it will be like this. The second thing is update quantity use case, right? And for that you will be using this. Pretty simple. Now the next thing is going to be wall. What is the third thing? It is delete product use case, and that is going to be delete product use case, and that is also going to be mock. So these are the 4 things, and the last one is going to be wall shopper session is going to be shopper session, and that is also going to be mock. So these are the 4 things that we have done. Okay, now since our view model is being created and we will be using it through inject, so over here what we will do is that I'll say wall class to test is equals to something like this. Okay, but I'm not going to do it this way, because this just kills every thing that I want. And what I'll do is that I'll use it this, and over here I will inject it as a qualifier, right? Just make sure to use the relevant injector for test. So just make sure to use the test inject over here. Like if you call the normal inject, it will not work over here. So over here what I'll do is that I'll use it through this. Now when I do this, it means that it will go into some sort of module section and it find for these classes, and since I want to mock them, I need to define some sort of test rules for that. I need to define some sort of create like a test Koin environment where I'll basically set the dependencies for these. Okay, so for that what I'm gonna do is that I'll create a get rule. The get rule mean is, again, it's like similar to what setup does, and it what it does is that it runs before every test. So over here what we will do is that we will create the test rules, right? So what it means that it will be Koin test rules, and over here it will just be something like this. And it's just like when you go to our shopper app session and you see over here that you define start session, and then you define the modules, different modules that you need to test. And in our case, since we will be using the modules and with the mock functionality, so over here what we will do is that I'll create these things like this over here. So you can see that when we go for cart use case, it will be this mock, and again it will also, this will be also be the mock one for delete for session, and the cart view model should also be created through injection. So when we do all these things, it will help, this test rules will help basically to mock these classes and create this class to test through this specific thing, and over here it will be using these mock. So this is basically going to help me with that. Now the next thing is that we need to define some dispatchers for our coroutines that we use inside these view models. Like if you know that we are using view model scope and things like that. So for that we will be using some test dispatcher for our tests, right? So now what I'm gonna do is that I'll be using this unconfined test dispatcher. This is basically provided by um, coroutines, Kotlin coroutines, and you can basically set it over here by like set this, since it's an experimental for now. So what we will do is that we'll add this annotation into it, which means that we are going, we're okay with that, and it can change in future. If it changes, we will see how it can, how we can manage. Now the next thing is we need to define some sort of, like, we need to define this dispatcher. We need to add it so that it is being used when running those tests. So for that what we will do is that we will go for dispatchers dot set main. Okay, and over here what we will do is that we will call it this test dispatcher. This means that we will be setting this dispatcher when the test is starting, and when the test is completed we will be resetting it. So that's one thing that we need to make sure as well. Now that is done. Now I mentioned that since we will be using this as a mock, and we have this one functionality specifically to use this, which means that whenever we are trying to like use get user, we want to mock this functionality, because we are not going to like share preferences and check for the actual data. So what we will do is that whenever this functionality is called, we will create a mock response and we will return it. And how do we do that? It's like, if you want to have for a specific functionality, like for a specific function, you can define it over here inside the function. But since I need this specific thing for each test, for every test, so over here what I'll do is that I'll say whenever shopper session dot get user is called, what we need to return is that we need to return user domain model, since that is also, that is the one thing that it requires, right? And for that, let's just call it this, like one username is going to be test at test.com, and this is going to be the same for email as well, and the name should be test user. So like basically this is something that user ID and thing like that that we will read. So what does it mean? That whenever I run, like whenever I execute any test, what it will do is that it will go over here, and when this specific functionality is called, like inside these tests, whenever this specific function is called, this object will be returned. It will not execute the actual class, but it will return this. So that's it. Now one more thing that over here that we need to do is that we need to define stop coin. So like since for every single class this test rule will be created, so it's good to clear it up. Now this specific test, right now it's like a very simple test, but you can maybe like add different functionalities for like when increment quantity called, it should increment the model, increment the model, something like that, right? So this is basically the stuff. And now over here what we will do is that we will make it something like this, run test. Okay, now what do we need? Like the first thing that we need over here is that we need to create our cart item. So that is one thing. What I'm going to do is that I'll say cart item is equals to cart item model. And now when I do that, it will like be taking a lot of things like ID, product ID, then price, then image, and so ID, product ID is going to be 1, it doesn't matter. Price can be 1.0, let's say price. Then for string URL will not pass anything. For quantity, since I'll be using 2, so the test should take it to 3, and then the last is product name, that is going to be test product. This is basically my simple function. Okay, and now the next thing is that we need to mock some specific things before like calling this. So again what I'll do is that this time I'll be calling it from inside, and I'll say that whenever update quantity execute is called, and it is going to take user ID and cart item model. So I'll just use any for both, and in return it should give us a result wrapper, right? So what I'll do is that I'll call it result wrapper dot success, and inside that we will be using cart model, and it should take a list of cart item comma success. I guess that's what it should do. So what exactly I did is that since this update quantity execute should return either a success or failure, so what I set over here is like in case of success, what you should do is that whenever you do that, you should be able to return the cart item inside, like from there, right? And now what I'll do is that I'll go for the class to test and increment it. And now what I'll do is that I'll say verify that, let's say, no, so basically what I need to verify. So this is done, and now what I'll do is that I'll say class to test dot increment quantity, right? And inside that I'll pass this. Now that is done. The next thing is that I need to verify, and since like we are not actually looking into the result because that we know is going to be mocked, what we need to do is that whenever this execute method is called and the first parameter that it have, this should have now updated the quantity. Like whenever this is called, initially we passed as 2, but now I would expect a 3 as a result, right? So what I'll do is that I'll go for verify, and inside that I'll execute this, and then I'll say execute. And what it means that over here what we will do is that we'll say cart item dot copy, and the quantity should be 3. Like over here what we did now is that we mentioned that the quantity over here should be 3. You can do it this way, or if you want to have like a total separate section over here like cart item expected, let's call it expected cart item, right? And then this should have a 3 over here. So now let's should say that it should be something like this, which means that it should compare these values, and it should be according to that. And now let's just run this test to see if what I'm saying is actually working as well. And now you can see this is working, and this is how the test basically executes, right? Now we'll do the same thing for our decrement as well, but in case of decrement what we will do is that it will, from 2 it should go to 1. right? And over here what I'll do is that I'll call it run tests so that it can run the suspend function that is as expected. And now if I run this test, you will see that it should also be able to do that. Now this is like, these are the very basic success cases. Now let's say if the quantity is 10, and in case of 10 you can see that it should not call this function, which means that update quantity should not be called. So in what should we do in case of that? So to test that, let's say I'll create another section, and in case of when increment quantity is 10, it should not increment the model, right? And now let's just pass 10. Expected is not supposed to be called this time because we are not supposed to do this, and this is, let's say, called any, and it's also be, let's just call any. Let's use that this is never called. Okay, and what it means is that this time it says that it is never called, like it should not be called. And let's just run this code now and see if what I'm saying is actually working. Now you can see that it means that is never called. Now let's say if I pass 9, this test should fail. Now you can see that it failed because now it says that it was called, right? But when I set it as 10, it means that now this test is like this specific method was never called. That's why it was a success. So this is how we can write unit test and like verify if everything like in term of small chunks is working as expected. And if you want to run this whole code, like whole class, you can run it directly from here. Now that's that. You can say that these 3 tests are passed. Now this was our unit test, right? Now let's say I want to test a flow, like for a, let's say take an example of login screen, and if I want to test, okay, how my login screen should be like tested, if I want to pass proper, and it will completely like execute according to how a normal user would test it, like so. To do that, we need to do a little bit of changes into our code before using it, right? And if you follow my UI test video that I have created, you'll know what exactly I'm talking about. But let's say I'll explain it over here. Now over here there are 2 ways. One way is to identify something along with the name or like the text that it contains. Like in some case we have these hard coded values that we can verify, but there can be cases where we don't know what the value of that specific thing could be, right? So for that, what I'll do is that we need to set some sort of tags, test tags, to be very specific. So over here what we will do is that we'll do modifier dot test tag, and this tag these can be like hard coded values like this. So let's say this means that this is my test tag for error message, right? In case of, let's suppose when we get over here and inside these text fields, let's call this test tag as email field, right? And over here this should go as test tag as password field. And for login over here, what I'll do is that I'll set dot test tag, and then let's call it login button, right? So this is the login buttons, like this flow. And now what I'm expecting is that I'll input some values into this, right, in the specific fields through my unit test, like sorry, through my instrumentation test, and it will go back to my backend and it verify if the user is able to like log in. If the user is able to log in, it will take us to the home screen, right? So we need to verify the home screen. So for that I'll go to home screen section as well, and over here, like maybe at this level, what I'll do is that I'll add one more test tag, and that test tag is going to be my home screen. So this is all that I need. I have set the basic tags over here for now, and then what next I can do is that I'll get over here inside this test section. And if you remember, we added the card test, like unit test over here, right? So for UI test or instrumentation test, you can add these tests over here. So I'll just create a new package, let's say, and call it features. and inside feature, let's create a class and call it login flow test. Okay, this is going to be something like this, and again we need to define this to be Koin test. Now when I do that, you will see that it will not work. And why it won't work is because when I get over here and you see we added this test implementation, which means that only the test section, like over here, this section is able to access these properties like the Mockito and the coroutine test and these kind of things, right? Since I'm going to like use instrumentation test, we don't need the coroutine test for that. We don't need mocking anything because everything will be like working as a live user is testing, but we need these Koin tests for that as well, right? And along with that, we need like espresso core that we already have. Then we have this Android test implementation. So basically if I take these four things out from here and set it over here, there is a difference. There is one implementation, there is one test implementation, and there is one Android implementation. For test implementation means that these kind of like these dependencies or whatever, like the SDK that contains these classes, can only be accessed inside this test module. And for Android test implementation, these things can be accessed over here. So since we don't have these Koin test and Koin test JUnit for Android, we need to add those. But along with that, there are some other dependencies that I'll also need. So what I'll do is that I'll get over here. What I'll do is I'll paste it. Now it will also complain about the versioning, so let's just add those over here as well. And I guess now it should be done, right? So now these are there. The next thing I need to do is that I'll go to my build.gradle file, and now I'll just copy everything that is there and paste it over here. So I guess that's pretty much what I need in terms of the dependencies. And now what I'll do is that I'll sync it. Once I sync it and get back to my this class, now you can see that now I can import this. So now that is done. Now the next thing is that I need to define some rules, like some starting point for how my test is going to be started, right? So for that, what we will do is that we'll define again a get rule, okay, which means that whenever this test is like whenever any test that is being run, it should be executed through some way. And for that, since my app is a compose, I'll create Android compose rule for that. So which means that it will execute like start my this main activity. Right now I need to define some test, so we'll just go over here and write some test over here. So again, this is normal test, and for this we will be using something like function login with correct credentials. Okay, the thing is that whenever application is executed, there is some time, like initially it will wait for the splash screen to see show and then go towards the loading screen, right? So for that, what we need to do is that we need to wait. And in any case of flows, like whenever you are like working in some case where the things are working async, like we make a web call and then we wait for a response. So for that, what we need to do is that we need to define some sort of properties. So to wait for that, I'll be using compose test rule wait until, right? And now over here, what we will do is that we'll wait for any specific thing that should like, since the first screen that I'm gonna get is going to be the text field, and I'll go with login button, let's say. So let's say if the login button is visible, right? And which means what exactly over here what we did is that we defined the all nodes. You don't like, you can use the unmerged tree to look for this. So all nodes, like when all the UI screen that is created, if any of the node has this specific tag, which means the semantics for that nodes will become like, it will have some information about those node, and if those are not empty, which means that there is any button like, or there is any sort of view that is available with this specific tag, so it will wait for that. But we also need to make sure that it should not take more than 5 seconds to load that screen, because a normal splash screen just gets over there for a couple of seconds, like 1 second or maybe half a second, and then it should take this login button, right? Now there is one way to do it this way, but also what we can do is that we can create a separate method for that, and let's say wait for login screen, right? And then inside that what we can do is that we can just take this and paste it over here, which means now I can just use directly this functionality over here, which means that it will wait for the login button. The next thing is that whenever the login button is visible, this means that the email field and the password field is available as well, right? So for that, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to say compose test rule dot on node with tag, right? And that is going to be email field, right? And then what we'll do, we'll basically perform some input, like we want to add some input for that. And since I want to check with successful email, so what I'm going to do is that I'll use a successful email. And then again, this is going to be compose test rule dot on node with tag password field, and the password should be 123456. Okay, so what it will do is that it will add these values, and then the next thing is that we need to define is that now on node with tag, let's just find for the login button tag, and when we find that, we will perform a click on that functionality. So once user perform on that, what we will do is that we'll wait for the home screen, and that's mean if we find the way, like the home screen, it means that we will be, the test is going to be successful. So let's say we'll go for private function wait for home screen. Okay, and over here it is going to be the same functionality that we have done, and what we need to do is that we need to uh, wait for the home screen, and over here the timeout is like slightly increased to 30 seconds because it goes to backend and it receives the data, and it can be slow since our backend is super slow because of the low resources that we have, but it should like go for there and then come back within 15 seconds. So you can adjust the timing based on how your backend is performing, but right now I just don't want this to fail because just because like the backend was like slower in term of response. But this is something that we will do, like I've added a little extra, and then when we get this, what we can do is that we can verify, okay, then if this home screen is displayed. Now one more thing that we will do is that we'll call that home screen function. So now let's just think about it this way, that first we wait for the login screen to come. When the login screen is there, it will be inputting these fields into it, and once that is available, it will start waiting for the home screen, which means that the login will be successful and it will take us there. Now let's just test this specific test and see if what we have done is actually working, and for that you can see that it will be executed on an emulator. So I'll just pop that emulator over here as well so that we can see if it actually do stuff. Now let's just wait for that. It's building. Now you can see that it added these values, it goes to loading and then it runs, and now you can see that this time it was successful, right? Now let's say I want to create a test case to verify, like if I add a wrong credential, then it should not successfully, like it should not be successful, it should fail. So what I'll do is that I'll say with wrong credential, and let's just change this to wrong credentials, right? And again it will wait, but this time will not wait for, like, since we know that it's going to fail, so we will be waiting for error screen, right? And for that what I'll do is that I'll create another function and say wait for error screen, and then it will be something like this. So we need to wait for the error message to be appeared, and if the error message is there, which means that okay, you can just assert is, let's do it this way. Now let's just run this again and wait, sorry, not this again, let's just run this whole class so that it runs both the test and see how it goes. So over here let's just uninstall the app, Now you can see that it added this login. I cleared it, which means the first test was clear. Second clear, what does happen? Interesting. It was interesting. Let's just do it again. I guess it was my mistake. I might have added something into this. Let's just run this again. So the first test, it opened, it added these values, started waiting, and this was done. Again for the next. Okay, so the problem is that when basically the one login stuff is done, and it should like sign out before we can access it. So to do that, what we will do is that when you know that we have this after shared preferences, okay, and I'll set this user into this. And why I'm setting this is that if I go to shopper session, you see this shared preferences is user, right? So what I'll do is that I'll inside this test, I'll try to, where is my login flow test? Over here. So basically what I'll do is that I'll, whenever the test is completed, I'll clear the test data so that it doesn't have to like end up into situation like this. So I'll just rerun the test again. Now this time let's just see, hopefully this time what I have written down should probably work. Now you can see that it added these values. The first section done. Again for the wrong, it says that it was failed. And now you can see both the tests are actually executed successfully. And it totally up to you. Like if you don't want to lose this in this specific session, and you want to like process with the same thing into the forward, you can do that. But this is how basically you can do. You just need to define the values and where you want to click, and then if there is a wait, you can wait for that specific thing, and then you can take it from there. So I guess that was pretty much it for our e-commerce series from my side, and now the ball is on in your court. So, and now what I would like you guys to do is to get over here and look into this issue section. I'll try to add some issues, but if you feel that there's like edge cases that we need to handle, you can add those issues over here. I'll add some issues, like maybe we need to have tests for all the view models and all the flows. So I'll create some issues for you guys, and you can pick it up, fork the repository, create your own implementation. Maybe you can write the test and submit a pull request, and I'll review that pull request personally. And if it looks good, we will merge it. Else I'll help you out into fixing this and eventually merge it into it. So basically that's pretty much it. Again, our e-commerce series is closed over here with all these things. So I'll see you in the next video with some other cool Android app, and till then, have a great day and happy coding.